Welcome to ADI TV. The Magic Wand tool is used to select things with more detail, so a bit more care and attention. Now what it does is it selects a particular tonal range. I've got a demonstration if I bring that up. So what this is at one end of the scale is 100% red, and at the bottom of the scale is 0. So if I just turn that background layer, you can see our scooter is red. We're going to try and select our scooter. So I'll just put that back on. Okay, so in the middle we've got 50%. Now how the Magic Wand tool works is by selecting varying amounts of tonal range. If we look at the tolerance in the contextual menu, that dictates the amount of range we're going to select. So that's the figure we can change. So if we were to select the middle of this tonal range scale, it will select the colour the cursor is on top of plus the next 50 variations up and down on this scale. Up being light and down being dark. If I was to drop this to just 10, tolerance of 10, and deselect for a second, and click again, it will only take that much. So obviously in real life, you're not working with a scale that's a pure colour. There are other colours mixed in. If I just take that background so you can see. Now this red here is a much more darker, almost maroon red, than the red we've got on our scale. But it just goes to demonstrate how that works. So there again, if I just type in, let's say 100, select in the middle, deselect first, it's going to select a big chunk. Now colours don't work in percentage terms necessarily, and a maximum amount of colour you can have is 255, and every colour that's in RGB. So if you add 255 in each of these colours, if I pull these scales up, you can see that produces white, and obviously no colour, 0, produces black, and that's how the RGB scale works. It's a bit different for CMYK, but if you're more familiar with CMYK, then you can go to those kind of sliders. Personally, in Photoshop, it's working in RGB, so it's probably best to stay in RGB until you need to print. But hopefully that explains how the actual wand works and how it selects. So let's turn those off. Select our background layer. Let's deselect. Okay, so with that in mind, so our tolerance of 100 is quite high, so I'm going to drop this down to 30, and I'm just going to select. Now once again, if I hold down the shift key, you can see the cursor has the add, and there once again, if I hold down the alt key, I get the minus. So actually I want to keep adding red. So I'm just going to keep adding bits of red. So you can see it's doing quite well at the moment. Now obviously I could keep going, keep refining this. There will become a point where it's possible that it will add. So that's not too bad. You kind of get the gist. I'm kind of adding more and more and more to grab the actual, select the bike. Now obviously I could raise the tolerance and it will select more or less depending on how much tolerance I have. It's also worth mentioning the continuous button. So if I just deselect for a second. Now if I turn that off, what that does is it looks for that colour range within the whole picture. So if I select this red here, and let's put the tolerance up a bit to demonstrate this a bit better. So if I select the red here, you'll also see it selecting the red over here, even though it's not in the same area or in continuous contact. Now normally if you have this button on, like I demonstrated a second ago, it will only select the colour range next to it or in continuous contact. So it will look at each pixel starting from the centre, working its way out, and if it comes across something that's not within that range, then it won't go beyond that. Whereas if you've got that continuous button off, it will look just within the whole image for that colour range and will select, so on and so forth. Okay, so that's a pretty good demonstration of what that Magic Wand tool does. And actually, until really recently, that's been a really important tool for selecting colour range, which is, used quite a bit. Now if I go to the next tool, which is actually quick selection tool. Now this is actually something that's kind of more newer and is a really, really kind of interesting tool to start working with. Now what I can do is I can just basically drag paint, and it works in a similar way to the Magic Wand tool, except instead of clicking I can just paint over a region. So in that case I've just dragged over that whole region, and it selected the whole of the bike. Now I can carry on. There you go. So I've got a bit of a problem here. It selected the light of the bike, but let's carry on for a second. So if I wanted to get rid of this bit in the center, I could always hold down the Alt key and just minus these bits out. So that's a pretty good selection of the bike, and I've done that really quickly. Let's just add this tyre. Okay, and add this stand. Maybe I can push my luck and get this next bit. Brilliant. So that's a pretty good, oh, there's a light at the back. Let's grab that. Okay, so that's a pretty good selection. Now if I was to add a quick matte to that, I can almost cut that bike out almost instantaneously. Okay, there's a few problems with the handles there, but by and large, that's a pretty good selection. So it's actually a really great tool, and let's delete that. That's actually the default tool now as opposed to the magic wand. So there again, you know, depending on what tool that might be displaying. But that's a really good tool, and that's how that one works. The School of Arts and Digital Industries at the University of East London.